Hello, everybody. Good to see you joining in. We're going to give a few minutes for people to arrive, and then we'll get going on the session, What is Needed for Sustainable Transformation in Commodity Supply Chains. Welcome, everybody. You're joining the Good Growth Conference session on what is needed for sustainable transformation in commodity supply chains. We're going to hear insights and solutions from the Indonesian and Liberian palm oil production experience. And this is one of the high-level panels of the Good Growth Conference. We'll start in a couple of minutes. Greetings, everybody. You're joining the high-level panel discussing what's needed for sustainable transformation in commodity supply chains, part of the Good Growth Conference. We'll hear from Indonesia and Liberia on what's been learned in the palm oil production going on sustainably there. We're organized by the Green Commodities community. And there's a picture of us meeting live, and here we are meeting virtually and making the best we possibly can of it. Okay, it's 4 minutes past the hour. We'll give it another 30 seconds, and then I think we'll get cracking. We'll just let you look at the slides for one more sequence, and then we'll get going. So we are the Good Growth Conference 2021, and this is the high-level panel on what is needed for sustainable transformation in commodity supply chains. Our insights and solutions on Indonesian and Liberian palm oil production, with a high-level panel waiting to speak to you. If you're not yet a member of the Green Commodities community, then can I recommend that you become one, because as well as this conference, we also have 200 members, as you can see, from 50 organizations and more than 20 learning events per year, not just this conference. So well worth getting together with others who are working in the field, literally, that you're working in. And there's the web address, greencommodities.community, and that will get you into the site. Many of you I know are already there and having discussions. So we're 5 past the hour. I think we'll get cracking now. And you can see on the screen in front of you, our panel is ready to speak. I'm Simon Cooper. I'm the communications lead for the Green Commodities program. We're gathering together here in the year of the Food Systems Summit 2021, of course. And that's supposed to awaken the world to the fact that we must all work together to transform the world, the way the world produces, consumes, and thinks about food. It'll require everyone to take action to transform the world's food systems. But how can we find examples of what needs to be done? And that's what this session is all about. What can we learn from the Good Growth Partnership's work in Indonesia and Liberia? So, as you know, UNDP contributes to Action Track 3 of the summit, and that's headlined Boost Nature Positive Production. And the aspirations of that Action Track 3 are to protect natural ecosystems against new conversions for food and feed production, to sustainably manage existing food production systems to the benefit of both nature and people, and third, to restore and rehabilitate degraded ecosystems for sustainable food production. Well, I think we'll find in this session that all 3 of those aspirations are being achieved in the countries we're going to talk about. So how can we take it further, and what's the special contribution that GGP's integrated approach can make? Well, I'm delighted that we've got to guide us through these questions Norimasa Shimamura. He's UNDP's resident representative in Indonesia. Now, he joined as resident representative in Indonesia in October last year, so not much going on since then, Nori, really, a good settling in. He's got more than 25 years of experience in the UN, and prior to going to Indonesia, served as the resident coordinator for Kazakhstan in 2015 to 2020. He's got a master's in international affairs from Columbia University in New York and a BA from Sophia University in Tokyo. So just a few bits of housekeeping. There will be ample time for questions towards the end of the session. So as the session progresses, as you hear the speakers speaking and questions come to you, please put your questions as they come to you in the Q&A box. And you'll see at the bottom of your screen, you've got a Q&A box. So please use that one to put your questions into. Don't use the chat box because we're reserving that for any technical issues that might come up. And when it comes around to questions, I'll select questions from the Q&A stream and ask you to unmute and ask them once we're in that segment. So I think that's it for the housekeeping. I'll just check with Alex and the production team that there's nothing else I should have mentioned. Obviously stay muted while you're not speaking so that we don't get any extraneous noises coming in, but I think we've all been on Zoom long enough to know that now. Alex, is there anything else I need to mention, or are we ready to go? All is okay, I'm getting the message, that's good. So Nori, over to you to take us into the session. I'm really looking forward to this.
Great, thank you very much, Simon. So dear colleagues, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and thank you once again, Simon, for that kind introduction. I don't know where you collected that information. You certainly have a great intelligence network. So my name is Nori Shimomura. I'm recently arrived resident representative here in Indonesia. I'm very honored to be your moderator for this high-level regional panel session today. We will be zooming into the cases of Indonesia and Liberia to see how they have been working on the sustainable transformation in commodity supply chains, especially in their oil palm production. Now, palm oil is one of the most consumed vegetable oils in the world. It is used for a wide range of products, from margarines to instant noodles, from soap, shampoos to lipsticks, from detergent to biodiesel, etc., etc. Pretty much everyday use. Even though oil palm tree is the most efficient oil crop in terms of land use, with the highest yield compared to other oil crops per hectare of land, such as rapeseeds, such as sunflower seeds and soybeans, the production system is still associated with environmental and social issues such as deforestation. As a result, there's an increasing demand from consumer countries and environmentalists to transform the palm oil sector governance to apply sustainability principles. Indonesia is the world's biggest palm oil producing country. And so it has made notable efforts to manage forest cover and biodiversity losses, accompanied by introduction of enabling policies. Liberia is also moving in the similar direction, so I understood. So how have the efforts of oil palm producing countries met the stakeholders' expectations and generated sustainable results in strengthening the sector governance? I think today we have the opportunity to listen to and interact with the representatives of the producing country government, the smallholder farmer group, and private sector. So 3 sectors, hopefully for us to elicit insights, lessons, and best practices for sustainable transformation. Now, before we start the discussion, I am very pleased to introduce the honorable panelists for the high-level session today. Let me start from Liberia. We have Mr. Robert Fagans, Deputy Minister for Agriculture on Planning and Development. Having worked over 25 years in the private sector, government, as well as non-governmental sector, Robert is a prominent agriculture and education sector expert in Liberia, besides being in the leadership currently of his ministry. Our second panelist, also from Liberia, we have Mr. Franklin Jackson, who is oil palm farmer himself and focuses on the development of smallholder farmers. He does this after he worked many years in the private sector at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and also ADAX and Oryx Group, which is a Swiss-based petroleum company, among others. And from Indonesia, we have Ibu Desi Kusmadewi, representing the private sector. She currently works at International Foodstuff Company as head of sustainability. Earlier, she was director of RSPO, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil for Indonesia. And she is a well-known personality in Indonesia's palm oil industry and its sustainable transformation. So we have a very busy session today. I think our GCC colleagues managed to put together a very exciting agenda. The idea is to ask 3 questions, one at a time, for which all panelists are invited to provide their insights. The first question will focus on the role of public policies and their effectiveness. The second question will be about promoting sustainable practices based on market and economic incentives. Third question will be about financing the transformation towards sustainable supply chains. As Simon said, I hope we will also have some time for Q&A at the end, and he will be kindly helping me steer this. And as he also said, please do use the Q&A box instead of the chat box, if I understood correctly, to jot down your questions. So if there is nothing that I have missed, maybe we move on to the first question to the panelists. And the question is on the role of public policies. So, dear panelists, from your perspective, what is the role of government policies and regulations in reducing land use change linked to agricultural commodity supply chains, and also in supporting sustainable commodity production? Do we need more of these, meaning more of policies and regulations? And how can we make sure that these policies are evidence-based? Could we please ask you to limit your answers to 3 to 4 minutes each? Robert, could we start with you to share with us the perspective from the government official?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the organizing committee. I have 3 minutes. Government plays a very major role in the policy introduction that affect the sector, because government interest is making sure that the oil palm sector is indeed sustainable, viable for the economy. So as a government, we make sure that policies are strengthened and we lead the process towards dialogue with stakeholders and enforces these regulations. For this, the government will pass in the law the land right to mitigate and future program in the production space, and so we have the National Oil Palm Platform, for example, will lead the major policies enforcement, policy regulation in the sector to make sure that we are on par. As I speak to you, there are issues that are presently being handled by the oil palm platform. The coordination and regulatory rules might increase, but wouldn't intend to get involved with additional coordination rule or increasing regulatory policies and other stuff. What we intend to do is on a minimal basis deal with the situation through the National Oil Palm Platform that have been set up in Liberia to handle all of the issues that arise that come from the oil palm sector, and that is going on. As I speak to you, is going on. But we plan to legalize the platform to handle these situations, to handle problems, how do we land use, how do we strengthening of our policies to put it to make sure that they affect the sector in such a way that results will be seen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Robert. That was exactly 3 minutes. Impressive. May I then invite Ibu Desi to share us your views from the private sector?
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Nori. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity that given to me and my organizations. It's really an honor for me to be here. With regards to the questions, I believe government of Indonesia has issued a number of policies, regulations, which we started to see that this policy works on the ground. Yeah, for example, in 2020, the government of Indonesia recorded decline in terms of the deforestations. It compared to in 2019, and although perhaps a study will have to be conducted, but that declining of the deforestation also is contributed by the decrease in the oil palm expansions in the country. So there are a number of regulations which I would like to list here, which I personally feel that this policy works quite well so far. One is the moratorium on the permits for the clearing of primary forest and peatland, and then moratorium on issuing the license for new oil palm plantations development, as well as the forest fire mitigations. I think those three policy are really key and critical in directing the land use change in the country. And not to mention that the government of Indonesia also has issued Indonesian sustainable palm oil in 2011, and then it even strengthened in 2020, and it becomes now the presidential decree. So it is now sustainable palm oil production is the agenda of the country. It's no longer only by private sector or NGO, but it is actually the agenda of the country. So I myself started my career in sustainable palm oil when I was with the RSPO. Back then in 2006, sustainable palm oil was really a very new term in the industry. But I think nowadays when people are saying sustainable palm oil in Indonesia, they are very familiar, and progresses also we saw also some progresses in terms of sustainable palm oil productions in Indonesia, both RSPO certified palm plantation as well as ISPO certified palm plantation. So I think there are regulations and policies in place which works well, and even being strengthened by the government of Indonesia. And with regards to also forest conservations, government of Indonesia also has issued this KEE, in Bahasa is a Kawasan Ecosystem Essential or Essential Ecosystem Zone, which actually try to protect the forest and high conservation value areas that are located outside of the gazetted protected forest and national park, which sometimes they can be located inside of the oil palm plantation concessions. So with this regulation, actually it gives umbrella for companies to also conserve forest and also high conservation value areas within their concessions. So I think those are perhaps policies that are in place and need to be continued and strengthened further moving forward. Yeah, thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much, Ibu Desi, for giving us very concrete examples and the early effects of those policies. Now, Franklin, may I invite you to share us your views from the farmers' perspective on the policies and regulations, their effectiveness?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on these matters. Let me just say that for this first question of policies in sustainable production, there are several strategies that can be developed and adopted as far as government policies and regulations are concerned. And I would speak about one or two of these policies that government have started and how we can get them completed. However, at the level of the Association of Liberia Oil Palm Farmers Incorporated, we believe that the following policies and our regulations could help in supporting sustainable commodity production in the agricultural commodity supply chain. First thing I want to talk about is the fact that the government of Liberia has initiated the creation of a land use plan. And a component of that plan is land to be used for agricultural production. This land use plan needs to be finalized. It has been initiated, but it's not finalized. And we believe that the finalization of the land use plan will give a definite direction to the use of land, and as such, create an environment of sustainable commodity production, especially as far as we, the smallholder farmers, are concerned. The second thing I want to mention is that on a parcel of land where the land use plan addresses agro production, there needs to be the strategic production of agricultural commodity. And the basic question that we sometimes brainstorm about and is considering in a lot of our discussions is, in what agro commodity or commodities does Liberia have competitive advantage? Because if we can address the issue of the competitive advantage, then we can use the land very wisely as far as the land use plan is concerned. I mean, in Liberia, we see that all and every kind of agro commodities are grown. Fortunately, as a tropical country, almost anything grows in Liberia, but we need to be strategic about what we grow. The final issue I want to bring out under this topic is that in Liberia currently, we have 4 oil palm concessions. And at the drafting and signing of those concession agreements, government agreed that it was going to finance the outgrowth development around the concession oil palm plantation. And we see that this is a tangible. Government has agreed to finance the development of outgrowth. However, since these concession agreements were finalized about 10 years ago, nothing has happened as far as the outgrowth being developed. So we at the Association of Liberia Oil Palm Farmers believe that a good economic policy for our farmers' development is the implementation of the outgrowth program, which will have, as it market the palm oil processing plant of the concession company. And there are a lot to say, but these are just few that we are talking about as far as these policies in at the Association of Liberia Oil Palm Farmers Incorporated. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I certainly wouldn't like to summarize what you said, but if I just remember the keywords expressed, I think I heard the importance of coordination and participation. And in the case of Liberia, you're dedicating the platform to be the single place where all stakeholders get together and find solutions for sustainability, sustainable palm oil production. And in this context, I think we've heard from Indonesian participants about numerous measures that have already been taken, introduced by the government, starting to also take effect already. And I should say that we as UNDP also have worked with the government to introduce the National Action Plan on Sustainable Palm Oil which encompasses pretty much everything from data sharing, smallholders capacities, coordination promotion, environmental management, market access, and Ibu Desi mentioned about ISPO, the Indonesia Sustainable Palm Oil Certification process has also been officially adopted. So this is a great development we have already seen in Indonesia. And part of this has also already contributed to the reduction of deforestation in the recent years, about which we are so proud of. And she also mentioned about the protection of forests outside the formally protected areas. And I think we are working as UNDP together with the national authorities to protect 1 million hectares within our existing programs. And half of this has been already achieved. And I think what Franklin said is quite important, the strategic selection, but at the same time, the law must be finalized and adopted. But not only that, implementation of it is quite important. And I think it resonates certainly in Indonesia and probably many other countries that our participants and audiences are coming from today. So without further ado, maybe I will just move on to the second question. And the second question is about economic incentives. So what kind of market and economic incentives do you think can help promote sustainable production and reduce inadequate land use change in agricultural commodity production in Indonesia and Liberia? What examples have we seen work and what else needs to be done? Again, if you could limit your answers to 3 to 4 minutes each, that will be great. And since this is about market incentive, could we this time start with you, Ibu Desi?
Yes, sure, Mr. Nori. Of course, when we talk about market incentives, first of all, it is important to actually obtain the market acceptance. So I would say the incentive from market is in the form of the acceptance of the products which contains palm oil. So that is really key, because we saw a number of companies being banned or products being banned by NGOs, even recently also by US border on some number of companies because of their issues in oil palm plantation. So market acceptance is really the essence of the market incentives in our opinion, because it's actually a validation from the market that we are doing right, and it's also an opportunity for us to provide a value to our customers and consumers. So that is market acceptance, and that's also enable us to maintain a good reputations of our organizations, of our company in the market, and being the preference of suppliers in the market. That is really incentives for us in producing sustainable palm oil products, or in adopting the sustainable palm oil policy in our organizations. And also with regards to the economic incentives, when you supply sustainable palm oil to customers, there are indeed some price premiums when you can achieve certain certifications, like for example RSPO certification, then you can enjoy some price premium. But also economic incentives can also be offered by importing countries, perhaps in the form of lowering the tariff for sustainable palm oil imports from countries like Indonesia or Liberia. So I would like to also mention here the National Action Plan on Sustainable Palm Oil, which Mr. Nori earlier introduced. And this is really a platform, a framework for the industry, palm oil industry in Indonesia, to also actually measures the progress and then communicate the progress to the market. And so there can be some more preference into Indonesian palm oil. So it's also the role of government, private sectors, civil society organizations in that platform of National Action Plan to also promote the Indonesian palm oil in the market by demonstrating progresses, achievements on the KPIs or on the elements which are included in the National Action Plan itself. So I would like to really appreciate UNDP work in facilitating this National Action Plan, because it's really not only it is as a coordination role, but it can be a platform for Indonesia to also communicate on its progresses in the sustainable palm oil productions. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Ibu Desi. And really sorry for the short time that I'm giving to each speaker. May I hear from you, Robert, from the government's perspective? Is Robert still there, or I see one less panel member? Maybe we have lost Robert.
I think Robert was having problems when we were checking at the start, wasn't he, Nori? So
Oh, yes.
we move on to Franklin and see if he comes back.
Okay, all right. Let us then hear from Franklin in the meantime.
Once again, thank you very much. On the issue of market and economic incentives, there are a lot we can talk about, but let me just point out one or two things. One of the things that we are discussing at the Oil Palm Association level is how can we grow commercially based on market demand? And because it's not just a matter of growing, but it's a matter of growing based on what the market is requesting. Let's take, for example, the product palm oil. In Liberia currently, there are 4 mega palm oil processing plants, and we can get the smallholder farmers to grow commercially and take advantage of this existing market. I mean, grow commercially. It's not just a matter of growing or oil palm, but how can the smallholder farmers grow commercially to take advantage of these palm oil processing plants? Because we have carried out informal studies, and it's shown that all these plants are operating below capacity. And this could definitely help, increase the capacity of these plants, at the same time increase the farmers' productivity, and could definitely stop the deforestation effect of subsistence farming. Additionally, one of the things we have seen is that a lot of smallholder farmers are cultivating multiple farms with multiple crops. Again, if you take the example of oil palm, that is grown on a minimum of 3 meters in density, intercropping could create multiple agro activities on one plot instead of the smallholder farmer cultivating several crops on several plots. And this could actually increase the market value of the farmer. One of the examples of government economic incentive to the agro industry is what have been called the Executive Order 102. Executive Order 102 is a proclamation of government that provides for reduced tariff on the importation of agro imports. And we believe this is a major incentive for smallholder farmers. However, we have experienced on several occasions that things that are imported into the country, agro imports that are imported, sometimes are confused for other things because of the linkage. So we are advocating to government that this Executive Order 102 be expanded to really describe what are the benefits under Executive Order 102, what are the agro inputs that can be brought under Executive Order 102 because of the massive confusion that's involved in importation. Another thing I want to point out in this light is the fact that the National Oil Palm Platform of Liberia is working with the Association of Liberian Oil Palm Farmers to develop a strategy for the smallholder oil palm farmers to get RSPO certification. And we believe with the RSPO certification, this could give additional economic incentive for the smallholder farmers to produce and become more economically viable. And finally, I want to stress that although the Association of Oil Palm Farmers has been created to ensure that smallholder oil palm farmers adopt the best management practice to produce good quality products, there seems to be no political will to build the capacity of the association, because one of the primary questions we are addressing at the association level is how can the association reach out as effectively as possible to address the needs of the smallholder oil palm farmers. And we have had it very difficult trying to get government to really collaborate with us in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering if it's Robert is back. He is not. Okay, well, great. Nonetheless, I think the feedback and insights we received from the two panelists were quite interesting and inspiring. Thanks for that. The way I heard both of you from, and I'm still in the early stage of learning and the commodities issues here in Indonesia, being myself new. But I felt like this is about the importance of identifying a business model that is a win-win for all stakeholders. Companies should realize that their investment in small farmers and their capacities, for example, is probably a surest way to secure stable supply of commodities, and commodities that meet changing requirement of the consumers who increasingly care about equity and sustainability. And this, of course, brings tremendous opportunities also for the farmers who today are often disconnected from the global green supply chains. And I think Franklin was reminding us that the government needs to also proactively make an effort to create that enabling environment. So a win-win business model stands, I guess, on a set of various assumptions. For instance, the private sector partners share the vision of sustainable food systems. I mean, that's the first thing, but not only private sector, I guess the government to start with. And secondly, markets needs to reward sustainable production. And thirdly, sustainable options remain attractive for farmers. And all of this, as Ibu Desi was saying, needs to be driven by the changes in consumer demand and also their willingness to pay for sustainable production. So you used, Ibu Desi, the word market acceptance. And this is not just a domestic market you were talking about, it was also about international market. So this was quite intriguing in my view. Robert is not there. So let us move on to the third question. And the last question is actually about financing. So transformation in the commodity system requires many things, such as broad-based collaboration, policy changes and enforcement, technological upgrading, standardization, and effective certification, farmers' awareness and skills training on environmentally and socially equitable farming practices, and much more. And all of these, I think, do not come free of charge. So how do we overcome financing obstacles to ensure a flow of capital to incentivize agricultural commodities producers and companies to reduce land use change? And what are the challenges and perhaps untapped opportunities? What tools and practices might be helpful? So again, shall we start with Franklin? Could you share us your views?
Thanks, Nuri. Let me start by saying that all banks in Liberia are merchant banks, and they do not give long-term financing, most especially financing for agricultural development. In countries like our neighbor Ivory Coast, there is a monetary policy that provides for 5% of lending portfolio of every bank be in agriculture. This is something that could be implemented in Liberia to give the farmers some sort of financing for their production. But one of the major challenges in Liberia is that majority of farmers, even large farmers, do not have the knowledgeable skill of doing farming as a business. And the capacity of our farmers, this incapacity of our farmers is causing the bank a lot of problems. And that's why most of the banks are not really comfortable in giving out long-term financing. So the capacity of our farmers need to be built up in extensive training to know that farming is business. And we at the association believe that this is one of the major challenges of the banking institution. So the basic question that the banks are asking is how to recover lending given to farmers who do not know how to do agribusiness. Talofi is working around two solutions. The association is working around two solutions. The first is to give formal agribusiness training, most especially in the best management practice and financial management to our farmers. Our farmers need to know how to grow their crop and use best practices. Our farmers need to know how to manage their finances, most especially between working capital, capital investment, and personal use. Most farmers are not there, and that's causing massive financing problem when it comes to the banks. The second thing we are talking about at the association level is to encourage the farmers to work with aggregators. There are three business processes in agro development when it comes to the farmer's production. The first is the farm production, whatsoever commodity the farmer is producing. The second is to move that production into a processing plant. And again, there are two things to consider here. Most Liberian farmers do not have the capacity to move the production into a processing facility. And in most cases, there is no processing facility for the farmer's production. The third thing we are looking at in this light of encouraging the farmers to use aggregators is that the farm production needs to be moved to a processing plant to be converted into value addition product. So most Liberian farmers are not equipped with the basic agribusiness skills. The solution is to have farmers work with aggregators who would ensure that the farmer is producing using good agricultural practices and that the farmer's production is taken into a processing plant. If we must produce sustainably in the supply chain in Liberia, we need to really upgrade the capacity of our farmers. And that's why we are looking at this whole issue of encouraging the farmers to work with aggregators. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Franklin. Yes, Ibu Desi, please.
Yeah, thank you again for the questions. I believe I also agree with the insights from Liberia just now. Indonesia also, I think, faces similar challenges, especially with regards to the access of financing to the smallholders. So Indonesian palm oil also 40%, or probably even today is more than 40% of the oil palm plantations belongs to the smallholders. So the challenge will be how to improve the access of finance to reach these independent smallholders, because this is really key in order for them to be able to implement the good agricultural practices, to enable them to have access to good seedlings, because experienced that many of the independent smallholders, they use poor seedling, which gives them very less productivity per hectare of the oil palm plantations that they develop. So this access to financing is really important for the independent smallholders in particular. So we believe that we also still facing the similar challenges as what Liberia is also facing. I believe now more and more financial institutions offering this sustainability linked loan to companies, which means that the interest rate will be reduced if the company achieves a set of predetermined sustainability targets. So how we can then increase this portfolio or this number of sustainability linked loan to oil palm plantations companies. I think there has to be a form of transformations in the financial institutions so that sustainability targets or indicators can also be embedded into the set of loan between the financial institution and the company. And most importantly, how to also include that sustainability target which also can also reach out to the smallholders. For example, how the sustainability target, for example, also have indicators on traceability of the oil palm plantations to the third-party suppliers like the smallholders, and how these smallholders can, for example, receive trainings or on agriculture, good agriculture practices, good seedlings, for example, or investment for them to buy good inputs, fertilizer, for example, so that they can improve the productivity on the ground. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, this was the topic I was looking forward to actually hear from the panel members because when I was preparing for it, I was just really wondering what is the requirement felt on the ground. At the macro level, of course, I can already say that as also UNDP, we've been working with the Ministry of Finance and other government institutions here to introduce green bonds, green Islamic bonds. We actually facilitated the issuance of the world's first green Islamic bond that actually leveraged more than $3 billion in the past 3 years. And the government, based on that experience, is now gearing up to issue SDG bonds. And SDG covers, multiple areas, blue bonds also. And right now we are actually working on the SDG green taxonomy, meaning as Ibu Desi was mentioning, okay, it may be not so difficult for the government to raise money from the market through the bonds, but then they need to invest that money for the right purpose. How do you actually know that this is the right purpose and this is not the right purpose? You need to create standard to certify that certain investment projects or proposals from the companies have economic as well as social and environmental impact. So that's quite important. And I think so of course it's important that the government and the banks gear up to leverage funding from the market through instruments like bonds and all these things. But I think it's at the same time, as Franklin was saying, it's quite important that the farmers, people working on the ground, is capacitated, their capacity is there to really formulate, articulate their needs in a credible manner so that once the banking institutions opens and introduces new credit line, there is a demand for that kind of credit. I think that's a bigger challenge than just opening a new credit line by the bank. So that's quite important. And once, of course, the credit line is open, then of course the banks can invest in the capacity buildings as well as infrastructure maybe so that producers can actually move their products to the processing facilities, as you were mentioning, Franklin, and that at the processing facilities, they can actually do the activities that does add market values for the agricultural commodities. And all of these is not just economically based and justified, but they need to be environmentally sound and socially sound. And the banks can actually introduce credit lines with those criteria, as Ibu Desi was saying. I should also do a little advertisement that we are now launching with the government, the world's largest RED Plus results-based payment here in Indonesia. RED Plus, I think everyone knows in this community, it is about reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Indonesia has actually reduced the level of degradation and has been rewarded $104 million from the Global Green Climate Fund. And now the beauty of this is they got $104 million for the contribution they made in reducing the deforestation, but now they are reinvesting this 104 million or 90 million of it further to contribute to reducing the deforestation. And of course, we are targeting into investment portfolios that rehabilitates forests, that actually reduces forest fires. I think Ibu Desi was mentioning this, that promotes social forestry, that promotes forest management and the capacity of forest management unit, and that promotes livelihood in the forest areas. So RED Plus is not necessarily a commodity focused, agricultural commodity focused program, but being Indonesia focused a lot on palm oil and its link with deforestation, its intervention significantly improves the farming practices of the palm oil sector. And I think an instrument like this, RED Plus, results-based payment, could also bring the very valuable resources, financial resources into the country. But again, it goes back to use that money, we need very good awareness, capacity on the ground, and good project, as well as independent capacity to independently verify and monitor and verify and report on the results. So too long for an advertisement, I understand, but I see that we do have time, that's why. Now, we've covered 3 questions and we are ahead of time. So maybe we can give us ourselves like next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, if there are enough questions to take questions in the chat box, or anyone can just raise their hand and speak, I guess. I just have to follow Simon's guidance on this.
Yeah, if you want to put your question in the Q&A box, we'll ask you to unmute and ask it. Obviously, if you can tell us what your question is, that allows Nori and I to work out who we should put the question to. So that helps if you can write them in. I had a question which actually came from a brilliant summary you just gave, Nori, there of results-based payments. Of course, in the economic system we've lived with for 50, 100, 200 years, the only result on which you got a payment was profit. So it was all based around economics. And we're now beginning to see other factors, particularly sustainability factors, being included. And with the bonds you spoke about, they will be triggered, the payment, the benefits of those will be triggered by sustainability results rather than financial results. So I wanted to ask our panelists, there's all this complexity in the system, which we're always trying to work with, that there are many, many different things that need to be done. If you each had to pick one, Ibu Desi and Franklin, what was the focus you'd most want to see in the next 5 years? What do you think will really give us the most progress of all of the things we could be doing? What's the one that you might want to focus on and do you think would give us the biggest result? Ibu Desi, maybe I could ask you that first, and we can encourage questions to come in from the audience whilst the two of you are speaking.
All right. Thank you so much, Simon. It's very interesting questions, actually. And I think Indonesia, in the case of Indonesia, with the help of UNDP facilitating this process to develop the National Action Plan on Sustainable Palm Oil, that is actually a big achievement for the country and for the industry. And moving forward, we should utilize this platform because it's multi-stakeholders platform. Utilize this platform to collect the data, measure the impacts from many efforts that private sectors have put in place, including working with the smallholders, and then learning from those lessons. What are the challenges and what should be improved in terms of the policy, in terms of the form of financing, for example. I think what Mr. Nori mentions about the result-based payment, this is also something that perhaps the palm oil industry has not really utilized or make benefit from. So some things that the platform itself, the National Action Plan on Sustainable Palm Oil, can bring this opportunity for the industry to benefit from, especially if this payment can also benefit the smallholders so that they can improve their productivity, they can improve their livelihoods, so that hopefully the need to expansion will be reduced by the smallholders. So I think one focus will be to utilize this platform. This is an excellent platform. It's a multi-stakeholders. Use this platform as platform for everyone to showcase, to demonstrate their progress. Just imagine like a company producing annual sustainability report. So how this platform can also produce annual sustainability report for Indonesia palm oil industry. I think this is something that will be very interesting. And of course, Mr. Nori, we really still hope that UNDP can also facilitate this process moving forward. Yeah.
Thank you. So the image that came into my mind then while you were speaking, Ibu Desi, was that the multi-stakeholder collaboration which has happened leading up to the National Action Plan being legalized was a number of different activities, but now a bit like the multi-stakeholder collaboration being a Swiss Army knife, you can now use it for something else, use it for different things that are now needed in the current phase that we're moving into with the Sustainable Palm Oil Initiative. So that's a very interesting view, that once you've got everybody in the room, you can use them for what needs to be done in the lead up of coming up with the National Action Plan. But now the plan is there are different things that those people can contribute. Franklin, what about your view from Liberia? What do you think, if I were to ask you to choose a single thing for the next 5 years, what would you want us to focus on?
Oh, Simon, one of the good things we have in this country is the fact that we have farmers organized according to a product in association. We have the Rice Farmers Association, we have the Animal Husbandry Farmers Association, and as you know, we have the Oil Palm Farmers Association. And one of the greatest threats to the forest and land use is the smallholder farmers. I'm not saying that the big concessions are not contributing, but in Liberia, we pay a lot of attention to the big concession companies, as far as land use and things like that. But we believe that the smallholder farmers is the greatest threat. And so what we are hoping that will happen in the future is that there will be some focus around these farmers associations to build their capacity to make sure that we monitor the smallholder farmers as far as what they are doing. Because if you take a country like Liberia, we have a lot of degraded land. People have farmed over the years subsistently. And so there are a lot of degraded lands, and there is no point in going into the forest now or something like that. But the farmers need to be monitored. The farmers need to be organized. The farmers need to be trained to know that this whole issue of climate change and land use and economic production, sustainable production and things like that comes from the bottom line. And the bottom line is what the smallholder farmer does. So we believe that if there can be a focus to see how these farmers associations in Liberia can be strengthened to reach out to the farmers and say, look, let's have some sort of database. Let's collect some data. What are you doing? And take it one step further. If a farmer wants to farm, how is he or she going to farm? Or these farmers associations should be capacitated to be able to do that. And I believe we will see sustainable production and we will see all manner of economic productivity that will happen once we get the smallholder farmers from these farmers associations. Thank you.
Thank you, Franklin. That's very interesting. So the enabling conditions which allow things to get better include the ability of the groups like yours that are bringing the farmers together, and everyone's got to be equal, if you like, in their ability to participate in the system. I think that's an important conclusion. We have a question from Ibu Tri in Indonesia. So Ibu Tri, I think we're getting you ready to ask your question live. So if you'd like to do that, just waiting for the technical team to get that ready. And I'm pleased to see that Robert Fagans has joined us back again. So we'll ask Ibu Tri's question, and then maybe we'll link back to Robert as he settles himself down. So Ibu Tri, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Simon. My question is addressed to all the panelists. So I would like to know from their perspectives, what kind of incentive the governments can provide to motivate smallholders for sustainable production of palm oil. Because I believe there is certification scheme that I heard also provide market incentive, but I don't know the progress. So beside market acceptance, as Ibu Desi mentions, is there any other market incentive like a premium price for smallholders who's been able to prove that they are producing sustainable palm oil? I would like also to hear the case in Liberia, smallholders Liberia. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Ibu Tri. Ibu Desi, would you like to answer that first? And then we'll ask Franklin, are people receiving better prices for their sustainable palm oil?
Yes, thank you so much, Ibu Tri, for the questions. Indeed, for the better price, RSPO certifications does offer this opportunity for a premium price, where independent smallholders who are RSPO certified, there is opportunity for them to sell their RSPO credits to the end buyers. So end buyers, the consumer goods manufacturers, can then buy the RSPO credits, and then the fund will go direct to the independent smallholder groups for their improvement of the good agriculture practices or to maintain their RSPO certificates. So there is one market incentives, I believe, that smallholders can benefit from. And then also from the economic incentives, I believe there is role of the government, which if there is if there can be perhaps not regulations, but something like policy which actually asks companies, oil palm plantations companies, to have first traceability up to the plantations level. So which then enables the palm oil plantation company, the palm oil mill, to understand the origins of their FFBs that they are processing in the mills. And from there, there could be an opportunity for them to then work with the smallholders to, and then this can be also a role from the government to basically provide these incentives to the oil palm plantations companies or oil palm mill who wants to work together with their independent smallholders in terms of the good agriculture practices training, in terms of providing good seedlings, and then maintaining a good price from these independent smallholders at the mill level. So how to incentivize this oil palm mill to work together with the third-party suppliers who are predominantly are independent smallholders. So I think this can be very critical in order to transform the industry, so that we need the participations from these oil palm plantations companies to also reach out to also work with their independent smallholders. Yeah.
Thank you, Ubadesi. Franklin, what's your view on this? And then we'll bring in Robert, who I'm delighted to see is back with us.
Currently in Liberia, we have a very unfortunate situation where the market determines the palm oil price from the smallholder farmers. However, at the national oil palm or platform level, we are developing a national oil palm strategy for Liberia. And that strategy is being finalized as we speak. Hopefully by next month, we will get the final draft. And the whole idea is that that strategy will be validated at a very high government level. So government will have the ownership of that strategy. In that strategy, we will then be working with smallholder farmers to determine their cost of production, because right now most smallholder farmers do not know their cost of production. So when the market offer a price, they accept such price. So once the cost of production is determined, we can then again go on a national level to see how we can set a minimum price for the smallholder palm oil. But those are things that we believe the government will have or incentivize the smallholder farmers on once the national oil palm strategy is validated. And then we go into implementation, where the whole spectrum of the smallholder farmers' production will be examined through the national oil palm strategy to see how they can get value for their money. And one of the things, one of the reasons we see that the market is paying anything for the smallholder production is the fact that most smallholder production are not produced on a quality basis. So you can see from the first on look, that's a setback for the smallholder production, that they do not have quality product to bring to the market to demand the price that's required for them to get good economic returns for their production. And those are things we are going to address through the national oil palm strategy that's going to adapt it, and we hopefully believe that will be finalized by September this year.
Okay, thank you, Franklin. Well, Robert, welcome back. I'm glad you were able to join us, and that's an ideal moment to bring you back in as Deputy Minister to talk about what Franklin was talking about. He's looking forward to the national oil palm strategy being made official and coming into action. What's your view of the government's position in making the lives of smallholder farmers better and also making it more of an economic proposition to do what they're doing?
The reason why we support the process that will lead to the legalization of the strategy, in fact, through an act that will be brought into full swing by the national legislature, is in support of smallholder farmers. want to make sure that we can guarantee that we can provide a guarantee to legislation that will support smallholder farmers to extend that they'll be able to that will be able to protect their production capability, that protect the markets, give them a free structure, free way in the space to be able to make maximum profit or whatsoever from what they do. We want to get support. When I speak to you right now, the government is doing all it can do. We have to the waiver scheme right now, and executive order signed by the president, where we work with agro import dealers to support so that reduce the cost of supplies that come in, like in terms of agrochemical or whatsoever, and that will go to our smallholders at a minimum cost. The government has already levied a duty-free waiver on that. And one of our activities right now in our projects, like the STAR project on the that is funded by the World Bank, we are supporting smallholder farmers, and that is a priority for the government, providing support to smallholder farmers by giving them seedlings to replant in their farms. And we were also able to get a grant that came from the ARD to one of our companies who is processing and palm oil whatsoever and put it in the usable form, adding value. And if you see a grant on ARD in the tune of $1.1 million to be stretched into the economy, so to support smallholder farmers so that they be able to do the needful in terms of getting the type of support that will lend them some profits, boost our production capacity for the sector. We're working on that, and we have been doing all that we can do. And I want to be thankful to the GGP and the Pro Forest, and at that speak to you and legislation, and I have been prepared right now. I drafted that will be submitted to the House Standing Committee on Agriculture and the Senate Committee on Agriculture, so as to come up with legislation that will legalize and put some legislation into position to strengthen the policy arms of the oil palm platform to give some maximum support to our smallholder farmers. There are priorities to us, and we're doing all we can do to make sure that to strengthen the capacities and get them support in the land space. I will answer the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. That was very good. We've got a question actually that's come in from James Parker about the smallholder farmer organization, which Franklin was talking about as you rejoined us. And you've just talked about the importance there of smallholder farmers. And it seems to me that obviously the government can't go and talk to every smallholder farmer individually. So there is a need for the smallholder farmer organizations, as Franklin was saying. James, we're, I think, getting you into the system so that we can unmute you. You can ask your question. Would you like to join us, unmute yourself and ask the question, and we can put them to our panelists, perhaps our last question?
Thank you very much. My question is, Franklin mentioned about the need to organize the smallholder farmers in order to have access to training and other incentives. And my question is, what steps should be taken in organizing the smallholders? Who takes the lead and how? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Franklin, if I could ask you to answer that first, then maybe ask the Deputy Minister if he'd like to give a comment on what it looks like from his point of view of having a group of organized farmers to talk to, and ask Ibu Desi to make a contribution to that. Franklin.
Thank you, Simon. Currently in Liberia, we lack pertinent data for smallholder farmers. So one of the first things that the Association of Liberian Oil Palm Farmers wants to do is we want to carry out a national survey of all smallholder oil palm farmers. Once we have gathered those pertinent data, like the name, location, farm size, farm age, all that kind of stuff, then we will create a database with all that information about the smallholder farmers, most especially their location, because their location would tell us exactly whether they are next to a primary forest or whether in the expansion they wouldn't be affecting the primary forest. And that database will be an online portal that will be available to the international community. Once we have gathered all the information through the national survey, we can then begin to make some pertinent decisions like where are the clusters of farmers and what are their needs as far as training, as far as bringing to them the knowledge of best management practice, or do they need a palm oil processing plant to produce quality product? And we're talking about the whole 9 years of the RSPO certification. Once we have all that data based on our national survey, we can then see where our farmers are, how we can reach out to them about the RSPO or certification and things like that. But the basic strategy of James is that we want to do the national survey of all the smallholder oil palm farmers in Liberia. Once we have that information, we can then go and see what decisions can be made as to what steps should be taken to help or develop the whole community of smallholder farmers in Liberia. Thank you.
Thank you, Franklin. Let's move on to the Deputy Minister now. And just to repeat the question, it was about what steps should be taken to organise the smallholder farmers. But I guess the interesting thing to hear from you, Deputy Minister, is how does that help the government? How does it make life easier for you in talking to the smallholder farmers to have them coming to you as a group, as we heard Franklin speak?
We have a dispersed structure when it comes to the oil palm sector, where it is not calibrated like Franklin was just saying. One of the things that we're trying to do now, like we are doing in the rubber sector, we are doing what we call sector profiling in the rubber sector, and this is one of the things that we will support for the oil palm sector. It brings a lot of support to our GDP, so we will have to give it some look that we do in the rubber sector. In the rubber sector, like the oil palm sector, we are doing sector profiling, making sure getting all our smallholder farmers and to see what acreage they have, what size of farm, and our production capacity, and then other things that are required to inform some decisions when it comes to decision making. And this is what the government wants to see in the oil palm sector. We will support this to a private through the private partners, the private actors in the like the oil palm planters association. We support this process through them, because if we have a system organized like that, we know through a geographical map to know how many smallholder farmers are located in Bond, how many are located in Nimba, how many is in Mosbaro, how many is in Grand Cape Mount. What are their yield potential, the production capacity? What are their challenges? What is required? Do they have road network? Do they have access to informations? Do they have access to improvement in material? Do they have access to extension services? These are kind of informations that we will love to see in the near future, and we hope. We were just talking about how we can get fundings of governors to support the process of profiling all of our major sectors that are supporting this agricultural sector in one way or another. And that is one of the things that we need to do, because smallholder farmers are dispersed all over the place. Some of them don't even have information on what is going on. So we need the union, the associations, Mr. Franklin heads and chair has more work to do. We have to bring all of these smallholder farmers on the book through sector profiling to make sure that this is done and placed in a database that you can sit and say, okay, in Bogojide, we have 200 hectares that smallholder farmers are about 500, then this is their yield capacity is this. And that can help us also know and in terms of how much palm oil can be produced in a year time in this country. That can be that can bring also information as well. So we will support and we're in support of the private sector to make sure that this is done, is realized. What we need to do as a government now is to work very closely with major stakeholders like Franklin, to make sure that these things happen and they are done in time to support the process.
Robert, thank you for that very very clear answer. And just finally, Ibu Desi, maybe a quick contribution on how it looks from the private sector in Indonesia to have the smallholder farmers coming together in a group like that.
Yes, I think now traceability to plantation has been a common practice in the industry because it's also required by the market. So now more and more downstream companies, palm oil processors are requiring the palm oil mill to share the data on their fresh fruit bunches suppliers, which includes third-party suppliers. And those third-party suppliers can also be from the dealer, from the agent who collect the FFBs from the independent smallholders. So indeed, with this collection of data, this may provide a good, better understanding of who are the suppliers, and this can be also the role of the private sectors of the palm oil mill to do some interventions in terms of organizations of the smallholders, because it will be much more easier for the palm oil mill, for the oil palm plantation companies to provide trainings on the good agriculture practices to smallholders organizations rather to the individual smallholders, and more so because I believe ISPO 2020 now also requiring the scope of the certifications will also include the independent smallholders. So it is actually a good practice and a good exercise for the plantations companies to reach out to the independent smallholders and to help them to be organized so that they are prepared and ready for the ISPO certifications later. So I think that can also be a driver for oil palm plantation company to start working with the independent smallholders.
Thank you. Thank you to all panelists for their responses to those questions. Nori, over to you now.
Great. Thank you, Simon, for helping the most difficult part of this session. And I have a problem reading these little letters, so it was really helpful, the Q&A. And yeah, so the Zoom company should allow us to change the font size. That would be my proposition to the technology company. But anyway, no, this was great. I personally found this exchange quite enriching, although short, but quite enriching. And I guess in the last conversation, what was really emphasized was the critical importance and the role that smallholder farmers play in the future. And to enable that, for them to actually fulfill their potential, I think it's really important that the government vision has that, and that it actually has the strategy to set the standard of products, as well as to create supportive environment, including the facilitation of introducing various incentive and support mechanism for smallholder farmers. And we heard from Franklin that the smallholders themselves, through the association, are starting to organize themselves with the government support. Here, I heard a lot of reference to digital gadgets, the need for technologies to come in to enable them to better organize themselves. But at the same time, I think Ibu Desi has been also saying that, yes, one way is for smallholders to organize themselves, the government to actually enhance that as well. But we have bigger companies, and perhaps we can actually encourage the government to promote the PPP, private-public partnership, so that the government would depend on or incentivize or require, if I put the word straight, require the companies to take on the responsibilities to work with the smallholder farmers and build their capacity so that the government doesn't have to deal with each and individual farmers, of course. But otherwise, I will not try to recap this rich conversation. I would just remind our colleagues, ourselves, that we started talking about the effectiveness and importance of public policy and how their enforcement and monitoring plays equally important role. We also talked extensively about market and economic incentives, how they provide powerful impetus to propel the sustainable transformation. And we also discussed financing, and part of that was about innovative financing in addition to the traditional finance to help build a smallholder farmers' capacity, etc. Now, we have just 3 minutes before the closing. If I may, could I just give 1 last minute to 1 last words? Could we hear 1 last words from the 3 honorable panelists? And I don't know how much time Robert has, so perhaps we can start with Robert. 1 minute last word from you and others. Over to you, Robert.
Thank you very much, Nari. Thanks to Simon. Thanks to the team for splendid exercise that we went through today. In order to make some impact in the sector, especially the oil palm sector, there's need for such a conference to discuss and know our challenges, to know prospects that can be made, what are the areas that we can pay our attention to in order to get things going the way it's supposed to be. We are looking forward to getting, I repeat, supporting the private sector in whatever it will be, so that we can make sure that we do the sector profiling of the oil palm sector. And this will be done through the instrumentation, through the coordination, through the supervision of the National Oil Palm Platform that already been set. We will make sure that a legislation is brought into focus that will and help to enhance and the activities that goes on within the oil palm sector, with the platform being the lead to deal with these situations, instead of have sprinter groups running here, head scatter, and putting issues at neck. This to close to say that we in support are supporting our small farmers. We will be and going through the exercise through the National Oil Palm Platform to engage bigger plantations that inside this country, everything here, to lend support to smallholder farmers, so as to be able to increase their production, create markets, access to incentives, everything that will keep them growing in the space as we go. Thank you very much for this meeting. We look forward to some other meetings, support for our partners and for the platform and for our smallholders, so that we can be able to make some great gains in the oil palm sector. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Robert, Deputy Minister. Ibu Desi.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Nori. I think I would like to just emphasize again on the importance for Indonesia to utilize and mobilize this National Action Plan on Sustainable Palm Oil. Perhaps mobilize this NAP at the district or perhaps sub-district level is a great opportunity to have multi-stakeholders working together and to use this platform as a lesson sharing, what has been working well, what are the obstacles, and this can also be an opportunity to provide some baseline information with regards to what targets that specific region or specific sub-district or district would like to achieve. So that can also be a baseline to help us to identify the areas where we need to improve. So this is a great opportunity to have multi-stakeholders working together and to use this platform as a lesson sharing, what has been working well, what are the obstacles, and this can also be an opportunity to provide some baseline information with regards to what targets that specific region or specific sub-district or district would like to achieve. So that can also be for the government to take certain measures, including if there are needs for incentives to the oil palm plantations companies or to the smallholders who wants to participate in this sustainable palm oil production. So I think the National Action Plan on Sustainable Palm Oil is really strategic for the industry to utilize and mobilize to measure the impacts from those efforts, good practices that have been implemented by different players. And also just wants to think loud here. I don't know whether the result-based payment can also be used for this sustainable palm oil productions at the district or sub-district level. So when district or sub-district level can achieve certain sustainability target, then some payment from the government or from the financial institutions or from the developmental organizations such as UN, for example, can be allocated for this achievement. So thank you so much once again for the opportunity given to me and my organizations.
Great, thank you. And Franklin.
Thank you, Nari. There are several stakeholders in the agri-development and commodities supply chain industry. To mention a few, we have private sector, we have investors, banks, venture capitalists, government, landowners, farmers, rural communities, and the environmentalists. There has to be a balance of the interests of the different stakeholders. As it stands, there is a silent war going on as each stakeholder tries to protect its own interests. Private sectors are after the maximum gain, and landowner communities are protecting their communities for their own benefits. Government wants the maximum tax benefits. The environmentalists want to protect the environment. And the basic question is, where does this leave humanity? We must understand that collectively we are humanity. And so the question is there a possibility of harmony among the various stakeholders that will protect or promote the interests of humanity? We will ruin that humanity if we fight each other. There is a common good of a win-win situation, and there is no common good of a winner if another party loses. The loss of one party is detrimental to the gain of another, and that means or creates a condition where the war never ends. We must find a balance where stakeholders can work together for the common good of every one of us. And I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak at this panel.
Great, thank you very much. I must say I learned really a lot, and I hope our audience and participants feel the same way. I think throughout these conversations, we heard really the importance of collaboration among various stakeholders. And Franklin just mentioned, however, those collaborations do not necessarily come automatically. And that's why the vision and the guidance and the regulations by the government become so important. And that's why it becomes so important for us to wisely use the economic and market incentives to actually steer the way in the way that that collaboration materializes. Sorry. So I'd like to thank our distinguished panelists once again, and also not to thank our green commodity team, Simon, Alex, who is not visible on the screen, and many other colleagues who made today's session possible. Really, thank you very much. And I hope I can see you and talk to you once again. So have a great evening, good day, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Nori. Excellent job. If you ever wish to leave the UN, I'm sure there are broadcasters all over the world that will take you on. If I can just signpost to the next event, which is in 90 minutes time. Now, I know for many of us, it's 7:30 in the evening at the moment, but this is at 9 o'clock Jakarta time, 2 o'clock Liberia time. And we have a fantastic high-level panel coming together answering that question, how the integrated supply chain approach can help achieve systems change. As you'll see there, we have the CEO and chairperson of the Global Environment Facility, We have Ulrika Modir, the Assistant Administrator and Director of the Bureau of External Relations and Advocacy in the UNDP, and also Chief Executives and Senior Leaders from all of the GGP partners. As you know, the Good Growth Conference is an initiative of the Good Growth Partnership, supported through funding from the Global Environment Facility, led by Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, and the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs. So Conservation International, the International Finance Corporation, UN Environment, and the World Wildlife Fund will all be joining us in 90 minutes time for our finale panel. And you can see the link there in the chat box. So 9 p.m. Jakarta, 2 p.m. Liberia, 4 p.m. if you're in Europe. So do join us for that. Thanks to Nori and our panelists and the production team, Alexandra, Federica, and Henriette. Enjoy the next 90 minutes and look forward to seeing you back on Zoom in 90 minutes time. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.